So thank you again, everyone, for being with us here today. We're excited to be able to share more information and the resources around remote testing through our third-party vendor, PSI. Before we get started, I know I was opening up a poll before. I appreciate those of you who were here early. We were just kind of taking a quick glance to see kind of everybody in the room. At the time, it kind of seemed that we have primarily program directors and classroom educators with us today. But I'm going to open up a different one here. So, for those of you who are with us, what would you define your experience to be so far with remote proctored exams? Where are you coming from? What's your history here? Just kind of capturing a little bit about who's with us today. Take a quick minute and fill that out for us. And we can share this data in real time if you like. Got almost everybody. Anybody else want to post anything there? All right, we're going to close that up. So it looks like almost everybody with us today, this is a brand new concept, right? It's not something we've done before. So don't worry, we have resources for you. We are going to be helpful, I hope. As we move forward, I just want to give you a little bit of background about us here at NHA. You should know that we are able to continue to provide remote testing as we are currently the largest frontline healthcare worker certification organization in the industry. We have over 1 million certified candidates at present. And because of that, we're able to continue to lead the industry and use the resources and information from those experiences, from our learning partners, to continue to provide the best possible resources for you and your candidates. And that includes testing remotely. Since originally launching remote testing in 2020, we have continued to streamline this process. And so today's session is focused on updates, best practices, both for you and your candidates. And again, for the duration of our session today, use that Q&A feature to put any questions or concerns you want addressed, and we'll do our best to answer those as they come in. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move forward into kind of getting started by beginning with a high-level review of all of NHA's testing options. So NHA has always worked to provide flexible testing for our candidates. The option to test on-site through an institution has always been a possibility for most of NHA's exams, and it still is. So if you are following the appropriate testing guidelines and proctor requirements, you can still proctor your learners in person on-site today. If you haven't already and your institution wants to, all you need to do is complete the testing center attestation. This ensures that you've got everything in place to run a safe and secure exam space. Testing on site is a great solution for you and your learners. In person, institution based on site proctors go through NHA's proctor training and must follow specific compliance guidelines for conflict of interest. Your on-site proctors are not approved for remote testing. If you have a candidate who needs to test through remote proctoring, connect with your NHA representative and we can transition any individual specifically to proctoring through that remote setup. But proctoring yourself through any kind of web-based platform, Zoom, Teams, WebEx, or any other online meeting format is not an approved testing method for on-site proctors. Now, NHA has been partnered with PSI Testing, that's our secure offsite testing company, for several years. For institutions or exams that need to use off-site third-party testing, PSI has always been an excellent option. Testing locations follow strict protocols and requirements, and they have thousands of locations open around the country. A link to these, along with any live updates on open testing centers, is available on our website. All 8 of NHA's accredited exams are approved to test depending on your location and availability of those locations. So since the spring of 2020, we have offered the option for candidates to test through PSI with live remote proctoring. So just like with on-site testing, remote testing will be leveraged entirely through the PSI process and proctors. This is not, again, something that you run personally. With remote testing, you can provide your candidates a a distance testing option and an easy option for scheduling if necessary. This relieves the institution of any burden of proctoring or needing to wait until we can get a proctor set up or any of those locations are available. This is not something you can proctor. Only PSI's trained personnel will monitor candidates through their remote secure platform and software. So at this time, there is no additional charge to leverage remote testing for your candidates. It's just a part of the third-party testing options. The reason why only PSI staff can proctor is due to what I mentioned related to it being a safe and secure exam. So PSI remotely monitors in real time with a professionally trained proctor employed through PSI. Proctors are prepared to actively intervene, provide warnings to help prevent prohibited behaviors, and if necessary, terminating exams if the integrity of the process is in question at any time. Candidates are expected to follow ethical and professional behaviors throughout the testing process. A full checklist of FAQs is available on the NHA website, and it is critical that your candidates understand the exams are not less secure when proctored remotely, or even a take-home test. NHA certification exams remain accredited, high-stakes exams governed by a certification board and requiring strict exam security protocols regardless of the delivery method. We are constantly reviewing the testing process, monitoring any possible testing abnormalities, results, and reported behavior of candidates or proctors to ensure test security and administration best practices are implemented. So as I mentioned, again, you are not proctoring your candidates through remote testing. Only remote proctors who are PSI employees with specific training, expectations, and technology to maintain the safety and integrity of the exam can do so. So they are qualified personnel allowed to proctor through this process, so you can be sure that all of the necessary security is in place. And again, at this time, there is no additional fee for remote proctored exams. To help you with this process, NHA has created a series of tools that you can access directly through your administrative login. This Get Started area on your home screen will rotate resources throughout the calendar year. So right now you may see tools around testing. This provides you access to quick links around the first steps and frequently asked questions, as well as resources on testing or implementing NHA's materials. Scrolling down your page will show you some of the most used how-to resources, again, geared around where we may be in the calendar year. These will walk you through the administrative steps that you would need to manage your account and your candidates. This includes, it would take you to a library of all of our helpful walkthroughs, how-tos, PDFs, and videos. This also has supplemental tools to help specifically with PSI testing from start to finish. This has videos and guides on using your resources and viewing your reporting, even items on what to expect on test day and troubleshooting guides. So lots of resources here for you. Okay, I wanted to do a quick check. I said it several times, but just to make sure, who is allowed, another poll here, who is confirmed and allowed to proctor a remote exam? What do you think? Let's go ahead and take your time. Specifically, a remote proctored exam. What do you think? Give you guys a minute. Okay, we're going to close that up. So there may still be just a little bit of confusion around this, and I'm going to bring it up probably several more times as we go. But if you take a look here, we do have 3 testing options. On-site at your campus, proctored by a live proctor in person. That's something that NHA proctors, individuals at your campus, can go through proctor training and do. Anything labeled under the PSI proctoring at a PSI location or LRP or live remote proctored exams can only be addressed by PSI trained personnel. Make that really clear. You should not proctor remotely. Okay? I'll probably say that at least 3 more times while we're doing this today. Now, let's take a look at some processes and best practices for getting through this step, specifically starting with applications. So, the process for candidates to apply for their exams with remote testing is as easy as our process has always been. We know that there are questions on scheduling, approved exams, it's a big call driver to PSI from candidates. So, when your learners are ready to test, they will need to log into their account at nhanow.com and select the Apply tab on the left-hand side of their screen. It may also be an option in the center of their screen in that Get Started area. They follow the prompts to go through the easy checklist and exam application. This is the same process no matter what method they're using. The only difference for PSI testers is that they don't select a date to test during their application, but schedule that test once the application is completed. Applying for the exam is very simple. It's designed to be user-friendly. It guides candidates through each step. They walk through their application following different prompts. And again, there are how-to guides and videos, other resources for these, all available to you and your learners through the NHA website. So, when to apply for an exam is really based on your program and requirements. Your candidates must apply for their exams themselves because during this process, they do sign an attestation of readiness. That's that legal document that outlines that they will be eligible to sit for that exam by the date of their test, as well as accountability to professional behavior and ethics. We want to be sure there's ample time for scheduling, and we'd recommend that applications begin somewhere around 4 weeks before the intended exam date to ensure lots of availability. It's helpful to be mindful also of any standard kind of peak testing times in the year at those typical kind of end of semester test dates. So for example, right now we're kind of in a typical testing season preparing for the end of a semester. So though scheduling is usually fairly easy because PSI has hundreds of open sites across the country, and remote testing can begin within a 24-hour window from application. Remote testing also allows for 24-hour calendaring options to help accommodate unique schedules. But please keep in mind for PSI exams, candidate applications are only active for a 6-month window. If they apply too early, their exam application will expire, possibly requiring a new application and exam fee, which is why we recommend that about a month before their ideal test date is the right timeline to get started. One of the big questions we get a lot is related to eligibility for the exams, all of which can be found online in the NHA Candidate Handbook. This outlines the academic or work experience expectations that are the minimum qualifications, as well as any additional requirements based on the exam or those candidates testing prior to high school graduation. In the handbook, it outlines any possible pathways to eligibility and is available again on our website, including for any instructors or administrators who may want to earn their certifications. In addition, from our homepage of the NHA site, there are several ways to learn more about certifications themselves, as well as individual eligibility. You can select that Get Certified feature we looked at earlier and go to the type that you're looking for, and they follow a pathway to check their eligibility. By following these questions they answer honestly, it will provide confirmation of their eligibility to test. NHA has always provided the option to test for candidates with accommodation needs. So for any candidate who may have an ADA compliant accommodation who has documentation like an IEP or 504 on file, once they have an active application on their file, they can submit a request through NHA's Help Center in the Forms field. Here are additional forms related to testing, which includes the accommodations form, which outlines any of the requirements and proper paperwork to request an accommodation. It also provides a digital download to submit that request. An approved accommodation will be applied to that candidate's account for a full year for any exam type within the same institution and testing method. It can be automatically approved through the NHA system as well for a remote test. All accommodations are not available, however, for every testing option. NHA will provide information based on the testing modality when an accommodation is approved. This is also where any appeals, on site exam incidents, or remote testing incidents can be submitted, is through that same forms space. The next phase of this process is scheduling a third party or offsite exam. So they've applied for their test. Now it's time to schedule. So once an application has been completed and approved, candidates can schedule their exams directly through the NHA website. They can either select the big green banner at the top of the screen or go through that apply button to access their exam main page. And that's when they can select the orange tool to schedule with PSI. They will be able to choose the PSI testing center to test from any of their open testing sites around the country, or they can choose a remote online proctored exam. Whichever they choose, the system will take them automatically through to identify the best location and preferred month, or location and time zone. For remote tests, candidates should at this time check the device they will be testing on in order to confirm device compatibility. We're going to talk a little bit more about this in a minute, but not checking compatibility prior to testing is one of the biggest issues with candidate exam success. They only need to do this on the device they will be testing with, but it's best to do before scheduling to ensure that this method of testing is right for them. The other piece related to remote testing is ensuring that candidates understand what their time zone is. Missing an exam time forfeits the test fees, and it is not an approved excuse. So it's best for candidates just to take a moment and ensure that they do actually know the time zone that they live in. Quick Google search, not hard to do. No matter the method for PSI testing, prior to scheduling, a final request to verify their selection will pop up, providing them the ability to double check their selection, time, and if applicable, location. Once completed, they will then see a visual confirmation of successful scheduling and receive an email containing all the details, including testing method, if applicable, location, date, time, what to have ready. It will include information on rescheduling as well, and what to have for the exam itself. So this includes arriving early, right? What type of government issued photo ID is approved for their testing method? They must have the physical copy of this ID. In addition, military IDs are not approved for remote testing. Due to federal regulations making it illegal to take a picture of a military ID, they are not approved for remote testing, but they are applicable for any on site testing. Remote testing requires a different form of government issued photo identification. So that can be a passport, a green card, a driver's license, any of the listed items from that email. No matter which option your candidates choose, they can reschedule their exams or even change testing methods at any time prior to 24 hours before the scheduled test date. To do this, they simply log back into their account and select again that apply button. This will take them to their exam details page. And this page allows candidates to review all of the exam security procedures and requirements prior to the test date, as well as reschedule or cancel as needed. This is also where they will go to launch the exam on test day. Any changes to their testing method or date must occur at least 24 hours before the scheduled test to prevent any additional fees or cost. As a reminder, at this time, there is no additional fees for PSI testing, either through on-site or remote exam format. So you do have the ability to monitor your candidate applications and scheduling in your View Exam Applications feature on the left-hand navigation bar. In the candidate section, monitoring your candidates can help ensure that everything is ready to go and running smoothly. So here you can see both off-site and on-site applications. Your PSI testers will be in the box that's labeled third-party applications. You can, from this page, monitor exam statuses, even completion dates based off of whatever filters that you set. The booking status and booking date columns will relay for you where they are in the process, including if the exam was missed, scheduled, or completed. You can also download this into an Excel spreadsheet or PDF if you like. If Excel for easier filtering and editing. It's available for you from here. So if you have a candidate who is set up to test at your location, but due to any extenuating circumstance needs to test remotely, NHA can accommodate that request. In this case, just contact your representative who can discuss with you whatever those options are for your program or even just the candidate in question. All right, so that was a lot of information. We'll take another quick check here. I'm going to post another poll. As of right now, how comfortable are you with the remote testing process? So just based off what we've covered so far, we haven't even gotten all the way through today. How do you feel so far about the remote testing process? Take your time. It's okay. We still got more to cover, so don't worry. And I know this was brand new to a lot of you, so it's okay. We are here to help. All right, we're going to close this down here in just a little bit. Anybody else want Annie in? All right, perfect. So thank you guys for gut check, right? Feeling a little bit comfortable. Some of you feel really good. Some are still like, ooh, I don't know. I kind of still have questions, and that's okay. We got some more to cover. So let's talk about some ways to help ensure that your candidates have a successful remote exam experience. So we are constantly working again to streamline this process and have identified that of the thousands of students who have tested since we launched this process, more than not like 94% is the actual statistic, have found their experience to be good or excellent. But we wanted to identify any of the issues that we have seen to most commonly cause a hiccup or delay in testing. So this is a list of the 6 most common problems found when testing remotely. Most of these come down to a simple lack of preparation and can be easily addressed. So we're going to talk about each one of these. Starting with the compatibility check. So this link is readily available on our website as well as PSI's website and is provided directly to candidates several times through the scheduling and confirmation process. The check can be completed at any time prior to test day and only needs to be done on the device they'll be using to test. A key piece of this is also understanding the difference between a Mac, a PC, or a Chromebook for testing. Each operating system may require a slightly different setup, so take note of the system check requirements as they address the most up-to-date platform, operating system, or browser version required to run the exam. If the system the computer is using is connected to a VPN, this can prevent the remote test from running on exam day. These situations most commonly occur when testing at a campus or using an institution-provided device. Firewalls and VPNs may prohibit certain screen sharing features, which will cause an issue. This is something that can be overcome, but it just requires a little bit of additional help. So if your candidates have to test through a VPN-based network or device, you will need to consult with the IT department of your institution to ensure that the device for testing is compatible and meets the technical requirements. Among the many resources we've created to assist with this, NHA has an institution checklist, an FAQ, and a technical guide, which provide you and your IT team with PSI's IP address and platform IP range. Now, if you don't know what a lot of that means, you're in really good company because I definitely don't, but your IT team will. This technical guide is available on the NHA website. It's important to help to prepare with your IT department or technical team before the exams occur to make sure the security, firewall, and hardware all allows testers to do everything that's needed to be done. So this will only be a necessary step if your candidates are testing using an institution-provided device or might be testing with remote testing, but on-site through a VPN platform. Again, to address this also, if you have more than one candidate who wants to test on-site, they do need to be testing individually. If you have the capacity for multiple candidates to test simultaneously, then we would suggest you test through the standard, regular on-site testing process with a physical proctor through your program. When looking at any kind of group testing, remote testing is not a compatible platform for that process due to the security measures. Also, just to confirm, though applicable to use for NHA's website and resources, tablets, phones, and other handheld devices are not compatible to run a remote proctored exam. Again, be sure candidates review the technical requirements for the kind of device that they'll be using for their test. Remote testing will work on any modern Windows, Mac, or Mac operating system, including Chromebooks. The webcam can either be on the device or an external piece, as long as it can be moved to complete the room scan on the day of testing. Not having a working webcam is one of the common issues candidates are facing and is something that is checked during the compatibility checker. If they don't have a webcam, then remote testing is not the best option for them. To help overcome this, some programs have purchased webcams available for checkout by learners as needed for scheduling. But no matter if it's built into the device or external, it is a mandatory part of the remote testing process. Unfortunately, having weak or unstable internet connectivity can cause an issue with remote testing. Candidates should always be sure that they have a reliable connection for the duration of their exams. And since no other electronics are allowed in the testing space, a personal hotspot will not work. If they don't have strong internet from home, then they can look to test at any secure location. I mean, I personally wouldn't have a good space in my home based on the room requirements and would have to go off site or to another location to do so securely. This is a piece of the discussion to have with any candidates that are looking to do remote testing. In any instance of a sudden loss of internet or any other issues during a test, then a remote proctoring event form should be submitted for review. These are on the forms link on NHA's website. We also fully understand that things can happen beyond everyone's control. Don't worry. NHA and PSI have the ability to review and react appropriately to an exam that ends in an untimely fashion. Whether that be due to acts of misconduct or acts of weather, that's exactly what the remote testing form is for, is to address that and take care of it. Ensuring that a valid and physical government issued photo ID is available is another part of the requirements for testing. All of the approved forms of ID are on the candidate confirmation email, as well as in our success guides and FAQs. The first and last name on the ID must match that of the candidate account with NHA. Otherwise, the proctor will not allow the exam to continue. If any candidates use a nickname on their accounts, they can contact our help center to get it updated prior to testing. The ID must include a photo. And remember, military IDs are not allowed for remote testing. We have resources to help identify what those issues are. Sorry, I'm going to go back one more piece. So this includes ensuring your testing space is set up correctly, making sure you have what you need, the government issued photo ID, that everyone in the family knows to leave you alone for the duration of the test. We have checklists for you on all of these processes. The exam time is not a flexible option. Not showing up to the test will forfeit the exam fees and require both a new application and registration fee for the candidate. They can begin the setup process to a test prior to the scheduled exam time. So we recommend no less than 15 minutes beforehand. If the plan is to log in at the time of the exam, then they do potentially run the risk of being late due to the sign-in process. They do have the option to start as early as 30 minutes in advance, but this does not mean that their exam will start early. It can help with the ability to begin the exam on time. Okay, whew, that was a lot of information. I am going to check here based off of the items we just went through, those 6 kind of most common issues. What do you think your candidates will struggle with the most, right? What do you think is the most probable issue that your learners may have during a remote test? Oh, wait, sorry, I forgot to launch the poll. There you go. Try it now, ladies and gentlemen. My apologies. Try that again. There we go. Sorry about that little technical issue. What do you think your candidates will struggle with the most? That's what we're looking for. Take your time. This is interesting. Everything is pacing almost identically. So usually we have like one outlier, but no. Anybody else want to Annie in? What do you think? All right. I'm going to go ahead and close that down here. Perfect. So we have kind of a variety of different potential options here. No one's worried about the ID piece. Excellent. What a relief. But we're going to go actually and take a look. Of the 6 most common issues, the top 3 across the country are the hardest for candidates to seem are connectivity, compatibility, and missing the exam time. I mean, those are the most common issues. Every item on this list, including these top issues, are avoidable with just a little bit of preparation. Remember, just because this exam is possibly taken in a home doesn't mean it's not something that should be taken seriously. A little bit of preparation can go a long way for a successful exam day. So now that we've covered what an exam is, how to schedule it, and the most common issues candidates face, we thought you might want to know what it looks like for them to go through a live remote proctored exam. Starting with having an adequate testing environment. So again, the checklist for a test environment is on our success guide, but it comes down to a few easy items. Unless approved through an accommodation request, the room must not have any other electronics other than the device on which they will be testing. This includes cell phones, cameras, tablets, or any technical or recording device. The space needs to be a room with a door and a desk, free from clutter, including drinks. No one can enter during the test, and if the candidate leaves their exam, gets up and leaves the test space, it will close. So be sure your family knows to leave you alone. Right? Do not bother me during my test. Bathroom breaks also are not allowed during a high stakes exam. Candidates can have 2 pieces of blank paper and 1 pencil if they choose. These will be reviewed by the proctor and will be required to be torn up after the exam is complete. A good rule is to remember that if it's not allowed in a testing center, it's not allowed for a remote test. The only exception for this would be the billing and coding exam, which does require the use of coding manuals during the test. So these manuals need to have on hand. They can have in them handwritten notes, but any loose pages or inserts will not be allowed. So they can have tabs and handwritten notes, but no inserts. So that's the only time that something else other than the testing device will be allowed during an exam. Again, all of the resources to help with this process are in the Get Certified area of our main website under the Live Remote Proctoring section, including resources to address what to do before exam day. You can see here there are how-to guides, the tech check, FAQs, even a walkthrough video. Candidates need to be sure that they have set up their secure space for testing, as well as checked all the key pieces that we've been reviewing. The Google Chrome web browser is the approved platform for remote testing. If the device to be used for exams doesn't have this browser option, it needs to be loaded in advance. As I mentioned, on the day of the exam, it is also important to begin this setup process prior to the scheduled time. Recommended is around 15 minutes in advance. Though again, they can start earlier. That does not mean the test will begin early, but it will allow for it to begin on time. So on test day, candidates should start by logging in to their NHA accounts at nhanow.com and begin with the exam check-in. So they click on the big green banner at the top of the screen, and then from there, it will take them to the Schedule with PSI button. So they just locate that button, and then the exam details page will give them the option to launch the exam. They should follow the prompts once again to download the Chrome extension. It's really similar to what you had to launch just to get into the Zoom webinar, right? It just takes a quick minute. And though they should have already completed the compatibility check, they should go ahead and do it again. Again, this is one of the most common issues for remote exams not running smoothly. Candidates must review and agree to the rules of the exam session, which include the status of the room, mobile devices, what to do if the browser becomes temporarily disconnected. They select agree, and that allows them to continue. They will need to have their government issued photo ID ready. A copy or a photo of the ID, not sufficient. They need to have the physical ID with them to be valid. And remember, federal law prohibits copying a military ID, so it's not acceptable for remote testing. When ready, they select Start ID Verification. Using the webcam associated to their hardware, they then take a photo of their physical ID. They can retake it until it's clear and legible, meeting the exam testing requirements. It helps to have a well-lit room, to make sure the process goes smoothly. Candidates then take a photo of themselves to verify that the ID and the person taking the exam are the same. To qualify that the exam room meets minimum standards, candidates then use their webcam to scan the room. This will run for 30 seconds, showing that there are no security violations or unauthorized materials. The proctor will not begin the exam without a full scan. They may even request for additional scans, additional images, like under an external keyboard to be taken. This could also include removing glasses or a hat that may be creating shadows on the candidate's face. Once all of these steps are finished, they can confirm their check-in, and then that will begin the proctor review process. Now, this can take up to 2 minutes to complete. The proctor may require that unapproved objects be removed from the room, and may require additional scanning. Remember, remote testing is not something that you can do. You are not a remote proctor. This is something that can only be run through PSI with a trained PSI staff using their secure platform. Once the check-in data is reviewed by the proctor and approved, the proctor will release the exam, and the candidate can then click Start. This needs to occur within 15 minutes of the originally scheduled exam time. That's why we suggest starting the check-in process a little bit in advance. Then the test starts. The proctor will be available throughout the duration of the exam through a live chat feature. They will not have voice contact, nor will they answer questions related to the test, but they are available to address any possible technology issues or concerns. After answering the final question, the candidate will begin the exam completion process, starting with selecting End Test. The proctor will confirm the intent to finish, and a completion message will direct them to return back to their NHA portal for to review their final score and result when it loads. That'll happen within 2 business days. Candidates will receive a completion email, whether they had a successful outcome or unsuccessful, and it will then again direct them back to their account to note their score, their report, and any next steps. In that same time frame, scores will load for you in your results button on the left-hand side of your NHA login. You can see individual candidate names, scores, if they've earned their certification. A passing score for all of NHA's scaled scored exams is a 390 or higher out of a possible 500. Any exam listed here that may be missing a score most commonly means that the candidate either rescheduled their exam for a future date or missed their exam. It will also tell you if the exam didn't occur for any reason through your applications feature. After earning their certification, we do encourage candidates to share their story. We want to celebrate alongside with them. They're really the reason why we come to work every day. So do let them know to go ahead and celebrate. It's a really big deal. We're very excited about them and their journey in this process. So we're going to take a look at a couple of resources, and then we're going to open it for some Q&A at the end. So as a reminder, if you're unsure if you can do remote testing, please connect with your NHA contact. And if you're not sure who that is, the survey link we're going to be posting, say so. Someone will be following up with you as soon as possible to ensure you have the proper contact. You can also continue to monitor our website for additional announcements and updates or resources. We're working hard to continue to bring you webinars, helpful blogs, on-demand sessions. We even have podcasts that we host. Our remote testing page takes you to all of the supplemental walkthroughs and checklists, including real-time updates and eligibility FAQs, exam test center openings or closings. All of those pieces we've been talking about are all available there. And we promise to continue to work hard to bring you and your candidates additional resources to help. So before we get to Q&A, I wanted to reiterate that this has been recording. Anyone who registered for today will receive the recording of today's webinar. We are also hosting another iteration of this exact same presentation next week. So you can register for that. Or if you think someone would benefit from joining, have them do so. We've got one more here for this testing season. So please join us there. We are going to be posting now in the chat box in just a second, 2 links. One of them is a survey around today's presentation. If you fill that out before tomorrow, you will be put into a raffle to win a $50 gift card. So please fill that out. The other is a survey more about you, right? We want to learn about you, your program, your needs. Filling that one out before December 15th will put you into a second raffle. Yes, you can do both. And that is for a $500 gift card. So please fill those out. We're really excited to kind of chat with you further. All right, so I wanted just to take a minute and thank you all so much for being here with us today. We know that there's just a lot of crazy happening and you guys are working really hard and we see that and we appreciate that about you. So from all of us here at NHA, thank you so much for being with us today. We're going to go ahead and open up for some Q&A, answer any additional questions that have come up, and then we can kind of close up. We've got about 15 minutes open for discussion. So how's it been going out there, team?
Hi, Laura, this is Mary. Not too many questions, which is good because that just means that they are paying attention and we have lots of good information for them. But there was one question that there was someone who was an approved proctor for Pearson VUE, PSI, and NHA. And with those multiple credentials, they wanted to know, is there a way to become a proctor for NHA through PSI?
That's a really interesting question. So each one of those iterations, Pearson, PSI, NHA, these are independent companies, right? So we vendor with PSI. They're our third-party vendor to host offsite and remote tests. So if you wanted to have PSI testing at your campus or location, if you have that available there, if you are a subcontractor yourself through that platform, that's a different piece. So that's not something that is with NHA, that's with PSI. If that makes sense. Again, if your institution has a testing space, Mary, you're blinking at me. Can you mute for just a second? That's okay. Blink. Yeah. It's okay. If you want your campus to set up as a PSI testing center, that means that you would be open not just for NHA third-party tests, but any tests that PSI runs in your community. So that is an option, but you would work directly with PSI to do that, not with NHA. So the only proctoring that happens with NHA would be if you were testing through your unique location, through our standard testing platform, which would be something through your institution, but you're not testing for NHA at large. You can't open up your doors to test anybody that you want. The only students who can test through that format are those associated to your institution directly. So the only way to have community testing where you can test anybody would be to affiliate with a third-party testing agency. That's why we outsource that. So I hope that answers that question a little bit about the kind of separation of powers between those pieces, because we don't contract proctors. It's not a part of our process. Okay.
Right. So they either proctor through their institution,
yep,
through the NHA proctorship, yep, or if they are working for PSI on a given day, they are PSI's employee. Correct. Working for them and only proctoring those students who register through PSI.
Correct, which could be any test, not just NHA's exams. So that's correct.
Okay.
Yes, correct.
All right. And then I just had a little bit more of a statement than a question. They said sometimes when they're testing or starting to test, their screen will freeze. And they said it's easily fixed by having them exit out of the exam and then bringing them back in to resume their test. And they were wondering if they idle on the screen too long, that happens. They wanted to know, is this something that others might deal with? And I think it has to just do with, their connectivity and what kind of firewalls
Yeah,
are,
that's
in
what
their
that sounds like.
establishment.
I mean, I would our system typically, like in a standard login, if you're sitting in our NHA website, like any website, after about 10 minutes of inactivity, it'll be like, hey, you still there? During the test, I'm not 100% sure if that is live or not, but if it takes you more than 10 minutes to answer a given question, that's probably another issue we want to address.
Right.
But that kind of like stalling or whatever does sound to me like an IT thing, something to do with the connectivity or how frequently that system kind of resets in that space. Again, so specifically for remote testing, Google Chrome is the browser you want to use. So this could be potentially just a reset on the back end. If you're testing in our standard format and using Firefox or Explorer, which we really wouldn't recommend that one, it's not supported by our platform. That could be some of that back end scenario, but it's not like a real common issue. If you do have a student that is having that a lot during a test, I would recommend that they submit a remote testing form just to make sure that everything was, if they got a result, that's just a really kind of a one-off situation, but it's not something that we see as a global issue. It's not something we've had a lot of kind of global concerns with.
And if the concern was for their student while testing at PSI, that would be something that the PSI proctor would deal with immediately to
Correct.
get that resolved.
Correct. That is correct. Excellent questions. All right. I just saw we had a question
Another
in the
question in,
chat, right? Is that one you're going to bring up, Mary, the one in the chat?
I'm in Q&A.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Keep it coming.
Is there any way to reduce the sign up date length? I had a student that wanted to test by a certain date, but they have to sign up at least 8 days before the test. They cannot sign up last minute for the test.
So this is a remote testing conversation that we're having. This question, though very valid, is a question specifically just so everyone is on the same page. That timeline is only for exams that are being proctored on site at your institution, not for remote or PSI testing. So that timeline, that window is a standard window due to the automation of our on-site testing. If you do have a scenario where you need that window to be shorter, I highly recommend you talk to your NHA representative. It can affect some things around the exam being available to run on exam day, your ability to approve or reject candidates on rosters. Is it possible? Yes. Is it always a best practice? Not necessarily. So that's a very specific question. I would talk with your representative about what's right, what you guys need, what your cadence looks like. What happens when we manipulate that window is it can affect, as I mentioned, an automation sequence that happens 3 business days before the exam, where the exam becomes available to run on test day. So if on test day that hasn't happened, your proctor shows up to test, your students are all in the testing space, there's nothing live to run. Now, is that fixable? Of course it is, but knowing what that looks like in advance, knowing what those steps are, that's a different conversation specific to testing through your institution at that location, and something I would definitely recommend. If you need that to happen, follow up with your representative to make sure that we can address it accordingly. So it's a great question, but it is just for everyone else's knowledge, it is not a part of the remote testing process, that window. But it's a good question. Hopefully that answered that.
Okay, and then there's another question in chat that's really not related to LRP, but as an instructor, is there a way for us to take a practice exam? Is this something we would have to purchase and register as a normal test taker would?
Well, my question back to you is, are you doing this so that you can practice for your own edification or just to see what it looks like? So it kind of depends on the scenario. Our practice tests that we have that are study materials are available for purchase for any individual candidate to provide through your program. If you're providing our study materials through your program, so talking up an official practice test for study content, you do have administrative rights to that. But going through a practice test from an administrative perspective does not provide any reporting or data. It's just seeing what it looks like. If you yourself, as an instructor, need to prepare for one of NHA's exams, we've got resources to tell you what those requirements are, your eligibility expectations, the steps you should probably take. If you need some practice assessments for your own self to get ready for your own certification, that would be something you would work out with your institution to make sure if they're going to provide it for you, if you're going to buy one, that's totally up to you, but that's a different process. So it kind of just depends on why you want that and what we need to do to fill in the blanks, just to see what it looks like. Okay, so that would be if you're providing it to your students, you do have administrative access to that. But if you're not, then you would probably want to purchase it for yourself, just to see what it looks like. But I don't know, it's way more fun to give it to your students, and that way you can kind of see how they're doing. If you have questions on that, put that in your survey link for sure.
Okay, Laura, I think that's all the questions for today.
All right, and we are just up on our hour, so I do want to say one more thank you to everybody for joining us. So someone saying the surveys aren't opening. Lauren, you want to repost, maybe post the full link so that they can access them if we need to. We definitely want you guys to be able to take those surveys. So we'll repost those here in just a second. Thank you all so much for being here. Truly, truly, thank you again. You will be receiving the recording of this in the next week or so. And if you want to attend again or have a friend come, we've got another one next week. So please join us for that. Thank you all so much for your time today. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you, Laura.
Thanks, guys.